I mean, Sean was estimating his arrival to be about 4:45.
Yeah, I think that should be our goal. to be done before-
I think that's generous because we also have to have all the applicants here. And I think we've got about half, so we're looking good, but we will need the other half. Yeah, I think,
He's the only one we're waiting. for.
yes, and Sean did say start without him. We're not going to sit here for 45 minutes in the cold. Probably warmer there. Okay. All right, do we want to get started?
Yeah.
All right, let us start recording. All right, whenever you're ready.
Okay, we will call to order the April Victorian Village Commission hearing. Our next business meeting will be Wednesday, April 30th, 2025 at 12 p.m. 111 North Front Street, second floor, room 205, which is next door. Our next hearing will be Wednesday, May 14th, 2025, 4 p.m., 111 North Front Street, second floor, room 204. Swearing staff. State your name for the record, please.
Kimberly Bernard Sheehy.
Swear, please, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Great. The introduction of commissioners present. Robert Johnson.
Kevin Parsik.
Melinda Shaw.
Reed Sprite.
Tim Skinner. Any overview of hearing for today?
I'll run through this real quick. So the way this meeting will work is the city staff will present the application. As I am doing that, applicants and or owners can walk up to the table to sit down. After I'm done presenting the application, they will then be sworn in and asked to present any additional materials if needed. If there are registered speakers, they will then be sworn in after the applicant owner have finished and each provided 3 minutes to speak. The commissioners will then discuss the case and ask questions if needed. And if anybody is conceptual or continued today, you have until Thursday, April 17th to apply to be on the May hearing.
Okay, great. Any public comment today?
No, not today.
Okay. We can then move on to approval of staff approvals. Whenever ready, if I can have a motion.
Motion to approve staff approvals.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. We'll read through and see if there's any extensions.
Okay, starting with 114 West 3rd Avenue, 332 West 1st Avenue, 862 Neal Avenue, 862 Neal Avenue again, 645 Dennison Avenue, and 96 West Star Avenue, 74 West Star Avenue, and 1103 Neal Avenue. And those are all of the staff approvals.
Like we're good. We move on to approval of minutes from the March meeting.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes from March.
Second. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Move on to our applications.
All right, we'll start with application number 2, which is 5864 West 3rd Avenue. This application includes variances for 3312.09, the aisle. For use, the aisle will bring from 20 feet to 18.31 feet, inclusive for all the surface parking area for 90-degree parking spaces, as well as the exterior building modification, including installing 4 heat pumps on the building roof. And the heat pumps would measure approximately at 28 inches by 37 inches by 14 inches. And that's staff rounding up. Exact measurements are noted on the application as well as the staff report. The commissioners at the business meeting wanted to know if screening for the equipment would still be a requirement on the roof. They requested a few additional photos from the roof as well as front and back views and sightline photos, as they are considering the line of sight from the right of way as well as neighboring properties. The applicant has submitted updated material to include replacing a board-on-board fence at the east side, replacement doors, as well as addressing the question about the screening of the equipment by citing a different portion of code. HBO staff did check the file, and there are some elements that were approved. Between 2019 and 2020, a board-on-board fence was removed, which was blocking the view of existing mechanical units, and it's typically recommended that screening is used to block such views from the right of way, and that's for City Code 3116.13, the standards for site improvement, as well as the Victorian Village guidelines on fences and yards, which the updated material does address. Since the March business meeting, HBO staff has also noticed that the front doors have been replaced by approval and the ground signage has been added to the yard between 2020 and 2022. And these items need addressed, but the applicant has addressed the concerns in the updated materials. HBO would suggest that screening elements are added to block the view of the existing mechanical units, and the applicant should also discuss how the third floor units would meet the process. I believe that was a talk from one of the business meetings of concern. The staff recommends splitting the application into the following: A, recommendation of the variances for the application with any and all clarifications submitted to staff prior to issuance of the certificate. And then B, approval of the exterior alterations with the conditions that the heat pumps are screened for City Code 3116.13, the standards for site improvements, as well as the appropriate wood doors are to be installed selected from the Victorian Village guidelines. Basis for staff recommendation is City Code 3116.11, the standards for alteration, as well as City Code 3116.13, the standards for site improvement, and the Victorian Village guidelines on fences and yards. And I'll hand it back to you, Commissioner Skinner.
To clarify, we are also doing for.
Yes, they were added, so the application will need to be amended to include that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, can the applicants state your name for the record, please?
Sure. Paul Fackins with Arcfluence.
Nick Carrican with Arcfluence.
So I tell she is, wants to do.
Yes.
I do.
Great. I'll turn it over to you if there's anything you'd like to add based on staff's comments.
No, I think it's all pretty much what we discussed at the business meeting as well. I did submit the additional photos from the ground, as well as like a line of sight study, which was like from an elevated perspective, which is not what you guys were flipping through on the screen. I submitted that the next day after the business meeting, so I don't know if that file is available to pull up as well.
It's been added to this file.
Oh, is it on the?
Just for sake of not trying to break the Adobe on these computers, everything gets condensed into a single file.
Okay, yeah. I see now. Yeah, so it's there at the end. So those were the additional photos, I guess, just to call out and note. And so the photos on the right are from the same viewpoint, just different levels of zoom. And then when you go further down in the PDF, so it's basically from front of street, back of alley, and then again, there's like an elevated of the 3D model views as well.
Very thanks. Okay, any other?
Not from our side, yeah.
Turn over to the commission for.
Staff report the screening of the units.
Mhm.
That's for ground mounted units.
And-
Looking to have screened or both for rooftop units and
Code doesn't specify, and if the commission would like to argue that their placement on the roof is screening enough, that would be a discussion.
I mean, my understanding of it, it's standards for site improvement. Technically, we're not placing them on the site, we're placing them on the building, on the rooftop, basically absent of public view. So I mean, like, that's kind of what the additional photos showcase is that, I mean, to her point, it is adequately screened from public view.
And I'm agreed, and what's been submitted demonstrates that that's our not point.
I'll just ask you to clarify that, so we have that specifically on record, just in case anything wonky comes up in future applications.
Sure.
Yeah, the code section I cited was for commercial buildings in certain districts, like any mechanical units. So that was also cited, which was a different section, as you noted.
A section of code
Yeah.
we typically reference.
But again, like, as far as public view, like they are screened from public view. So even referencing that code section.
So really the screening that's being proposed by the ground. That's the wood fence. Generally.
And that's for the existing items
Right.
down there,
Yeah.
as well as addressing that something was removed from that approval and it's now being put back.
Correct, yeah.
Any other thoughts or comments on the?
Honestly, it's adding more screens to this, but so just make it that much bigger each.
Yeah, one of the comments was about, as well, originally about like a bigger unit to serve everything. But obviously like the individual controls was what was preferred and desired. Plus it keeps the footprint smaller of the individual units. So yeah, to that point as well, that was another consideration when we sized the units.
Move on to doors. We can see the, so left was previous, so
The top is the previous and the left, yes. So basically it's a street view from Google Earth dated previously. It was like an aluminum screen door on the outside with like a secondary door on the inside. But the public facing door was that aluminum screen door from the 80s or 70s.
I will say that they were in barely functional shape and didn't have any security
The
attributes to them.
The property in general was pretty run down when the owners took over. Like the site was in terrible condition, the building was in terrible condition. So I mean, like there were several improvements that were done when they took over.
The owners didn't necessarily realize what was entailed in making these improvements, but I can say that they spent quite a bit of money on these doors. They're fiberglass. I think they're about $3,000 a piece.
I guess the question here would be, so have the process gone for a process of not replacement of the doors is one thing, getting the right placement for that part. I guess understanding how the current deviate from the new HDR and finding a route towards something that's pretty.
It's probably worth mentioning that there are two doors on the balcony on the second floor and then 4 doors on the first floor street front.
Were they all replaced with these elements?
I think they all match now, correct?
And they didn't match before, actually.
Yeah, they were different before.
Similar, mostly glass, wood, basically a full exposure of glass with a wood frame. Very minimal, almost looked like it was homemade.
And on the lower level, there was a transom as well that was previously boarded over, that was restored to a transom condition currently.
These doors don't need any work. For front doors. It's all doors. We have allowed fiberglass on occasion to build, but even then, unless there is investment for the solid doors.
So I will note that I think we have for like, not necessarily a safety concern, but we're not always consistent with what type of doors go in it. It's the 3/4 light. I know we've done a half light, which that isn't in the guidelines, but we do have precedent for it in the neighborhood as well as approval. But there is a 6-panel and a 4-panel that are in the guidelines as well. And I think we've had approvals for front doors being a variation of the solid before. And I can tell you the doors that were there, those multi-lights, those would have not been original. And I don't know how historic they would be. I know we do see them throughout Victorian Village, but they wouldn't have been original to that.
It seemed the doors were dated from like the 70s, 80s era, the doors that were there previously. So again, like pretty run down in poor condition.
Also, I don't know if this helps, but the client's mindset at the time was cars were getting broken into in the parking lot, and the tenants were concerned about security and safety.
So my question, how do we, if we were to prove it as is, how do we do that without making sure we're not setting any precedents?
Transom that was repaired during the new door. Was that on site already? Was that already there?
They were
were-
there,
yeah.
but they were covered over and
Boarded
basically
up.
solid, boarded up.
They were. Door.
Correct. So the opening's the original opening with
In
the original header.
In the original, yeah.
Yeah. And then basically transom was just restored to glass and the number was put on the glass surface.
Everyone started at 20.
I can maybe see another first floor.
It's the security.
Well, and it's very unlikely that those would have ever been installed for their own.
Yeah.
They service my purpose. That's what they do.
It is a shared balcony for both units.
So the other doors were not historic.
Staff's going to add that we do require the entry doors are wood,
Yep.
as well as we've had discussions before, just because work was done without approval, doesn't necessarily mean it gets to stay. Which is why we always tell people, please come to us before, because we don't like having these conversations and going back around and possibly having people replace items, especially if it was up to code guidelines or run into other issues.
When did we approve the fiberglass before? Do you know when it was all?
Yes, it was, if you remember the application from a couple years ago, that a younger couple was here asking to reside their house with vinyl. They were also asking to replace the front doors. I believe it was a duplex and it didn't have a porch on it. And the commission ultimately said because there was no covering over it, that they could do the fiberglass doors. But I do believe the fiberglass doors that they used did match the design in the guidelines. That's the only one that I can remember off the top of my head.
Like, just as a broad, in a broader picture, not that I would sit here and change the code of the city here, but the aversion to the fiberglass, is there a history to why that is? I mean, some of the new fiberglasses are indistinguishable.
So it is a office requirement. If you would like more detail, I can ask the historic preservation officer, but I have had that discussion with him before, and it is an office requirement that those entry doors are wood. They historically would have been wood, and I think that's one place that they're very adamant that that's gonna stay wood. But we are flexible in terms of, you know, if it is a partial light, because Victorian, one of the styles is 3/4 light, and you know, some people aren't comfortable having all of that glass kind of exposing their front door. So there are solid options.
These do have a covering. It is basically impossible to get any kind of warranty on room door to even have. It was a piece of. I mean, if we were looking at this, they hadn't been replaced yet. I don't.
I think that, again, first, that would be our stance, where it is our nature to try to problem solve and work through and see if there are reasons. I think we're struggling with that right now.
This probably won't help. but the antithesis of all this is to do the attic conversion. We're adding additional units to the building. Replacing those doors with a wood door. It's going to be painted. And budget is tight. So I just want to like weigh the options of these are really nice doors. And just have that as a consideration.
So like financial.
Yeah. Yep.
The
Okay.
quality can, like you agreed. They're decent doors, right? I mean, like, compared to what could have happened, right? These could have ended up as aluminum steel doors, right? So like, we could be in a different, but our decision would be a lot easier.
And there are additional improvements on the way.
Oh yeah.
Including exterior.
We're gonna be doing some landscaping, but majority of it's gonna be in the common halls and interior of the building. Most of the building's already been redone. We're focusing just on the common hallway and then the attic space that we're converting. Yeah.
I'm just.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm figuring out, I know we're already breaking this into two, but if we break it into a third, we're feeling comfortable with screening. Breaking the doors, that it's a separate item, but continue that to give you time to absorb the information, kind of know what's heading on and evaluate that kind of totality of the project. Understanding what these doors are, exactly which alternative solutions, but you kind of get the jive of where we're making heading just based on the letter of what kind of.
Okay, so that would be splitting it into two, and then we have the variances as well.
So, well, you call it A and then.
Yeah.
One, two.
C, maybe C. Please don't make it anymore.
Well, I guess you could have like the items that were like the wood fencing, the door, like all the ones that were repairing or whatever that were discovered, right? And the ones that we're requesting that are new, and then the variance. Which is the screening, which is,
Yeah, or you could do, the variances, everything that you will approve and what you'll continue.
That's,
Yeah.
that's why. And so just so we can not linger on things that.
Yeah.
Right.
Like give us more time to kind of work through we
Yeah.
might come back to place.
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, we're not opposed to that because that would allow us to keep moving with the building department through things.
We still need to talk about the variance. In that commentary, yeah.
I think this discussion of business meeting last time. Around. Strengths of the existing lot. So, what later it's failed. Don't get it out. Pretty the variance that's submitted.
Either, these are people that are working in their designated spot.
So, yeah.
It's very good to them.
Any other discussion of this night before we further?
I don't know, but anyway, it's gonna get solved. It's gonna get even better. So what specific aspects of the door is not from material, right? So what about the solid versus liquid windows or lights?
But I mean, it sounds to me like there could be a 4-panel or a 6-panel door that's fully opaque. That could be full at the time, step list, that be approved door list.
So it's not a list, it's just the guidelines.
So
I don't want to get anybody confused.
somewhere,
You're fine.
4-panel or 6-panel door would be closer to meeting the guidelines. So I don't think it necessarily, from what glass we did.
So, and for you guys, if you were required to change out the doors and you had the option between having glass or solid, what would be your choice?
Solid. Yeah.
So what we're talking about is that we would have a door that the material is indistinguishable by appearance. And then you're talking about just going from 2-panel to 4-panel. Like, really, like, that's probably, what are we gonna get out of this? So I'm just trying to put it in perspective. That's, money aside, it's a lot of effort for anybody to have to do, just put them in programs.
So I'm gonna reference code guidelines.
Yep, I know, I
want to
don't know
make
if I'm gonna do this yet, but I'm just making a point.
That's, I want to make sure we're not being arbitrary, because
No.
I don't want anything coming back and going VOCA because we've, changed our mind about something.
I mean, Lord knows that when things happen without approval, we usually dig in pretty hard. I'm just having trouble with that here. Because, it's one thing, okay, so I'm gonna remove the slate roof, okay, we put a new one on, right? Like, this is. Yes, it does not like the approach to take, but the benefit that would be gained by anybody by pushing this to go to wood doors or 4 panels is, I don't think it is worth it. That's,
So I'm going to interject here, because when you're talking about the slate roof, I mean, clearly that is a vast difference in money. And it's been the office's position that a self-imposed financial hardship doesn't count as a financial hardship. We
Understood.
want to try to be consistent with code and guidelines, as well as if we let one person do it, what does mean somebody else isn't going to do the same thing and then come back to beg for forgiveness. If you have that little voice of Jeffrey in your head,
Yeah.
yeah.
I do.
Former commissioners used to have some very loud words about some of the comments about people that came through with much more egregious code violations and how we would handle them. So I'm just gonna, code guidelines and making sure we're consistent with things.
Agree with the spirit of what you're saying. Yeah, I'm something here, agree there. That's where I think,
Yeah.
that's where I think the consideration here, it may not change.
Yeah.
The way, but at least gives you some time to go back to the client.
Review the guideline.
Review it, understand what you're getting into, without just currently agreeing with something.
Yeah, and we're, like we said, we're not opposed to the continuation of it, so.
Yeah, and I'm also gonna note, it might not change what you are proposing either. I'll just need to know what you want, how you would like to move forward in order to get you back on an agenda.
Okay. And then just the egress thing too, it wasn't brought up, but there is a dedicated stair already internal in a shared hallway that the spaces tie into. So, and it actually exits out through the front. One of those front doors is for the shared like second level and what will be the attic units basically. So, I mean, it's already kind of an egress component there. We're not adding like an exterior stair or doing anything to satisfy egress requirements.
concerned,
No.
keep showing up later or.
No. Yeah, it's been thought through and processed, and so like there is already that component there that does not require any further modification to the exterior.
So,
Okay, so,
splitting it.
yeah, so we're gonna do variance as item A, and then we'll split item B and C will be, hopefully be the elements that we're gonna both see the village.
Because the variance has to be a separate one.
Yes, because we recommend approval, we don't approve because we're not the final kind of stamping off. That's either building and zoning or city council, depending on where it lands.
Well, let's do the easy one first. Can I do a motion to, application? Application COA 2500-121-58 64 West Third Avenue, Part A, to recommend the zoning variance as submitted. Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Part A passes.
Okay, and motion, application COA 2500-121-58 West Third Avenue, Part B, which is to approve the heat pumps on the roof, as well as the replacement of the screening to the side of the fencing rather on the side of the building, as submitted.
And I believe we'll want kind of the justification of units on the roof that they are.
Yes, the screening, yeah, the screening is, the units on the roof do not need any particular special screening because then they're not going to be visible from the neighbors or ground level based on their location on the roof and the height.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item B passes.
Motion on application COA 2500121, 58 to 64 West Third Avenue, Part C, to continue the application to allow the applicant to evaluate options regarding the replacement of the front doors on the.
Second. All those in favor?
I
Opposed? That motion is for continuation.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
It's taking me a couple days to type up notes and get it to you, but if you're quicker than I am, please don't hesitate to send me an email.
Okay.
Or updated materials.
No worries. You're pretty good about it usually.
Some days, we'll see.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we'll move on to application number 3, which is for 762 Park Street.
We need to certify for one.
No, that one's just staff approval.
Oh, it's that, okay.
I appreciate that you're doing this. I promise, I'm just not cherry picking every application.
She would have it on staff.
All right, so this application is to remove the existing rear two-story deck, reconstruct the deck, alter the rear stair configuration, and add a concrete walking path, alter railings, roof, and porch foundation, alter the location of the AC units, remove the board-on-board fence, and add 2 new panel steel doors to the basement. The commissioners at the business meeting encouraged the rear doors to be more in line with the code and guidelines. They requested HBO staff confirm if the doors the doors that were removed were historic, as there was some concern about the alteration not being appropriate without a second door for the stairs. And I did check the file to confirm. And they requested, and by they, the commission just requested to discuss why one door was replaced and not both. Commissioners also requested paint colors and chips or swatches, and the paint color is provided on page A101 of the plans, and it's noted as tricorn black. HBO staff did check the file. The oldest photo in that file of the rear is from 1989, which has been added to the materials, and the rear staircase, as Jose has pulled up here, did not have any doors at the time of this photo. The previous ones were installed without approval and are not historic. The commission should discuss if the changes made to the design are appropriate for existing city code and guidelines. And you can see what was that was probably what was originally there. Staff recommends approval of the application with the condition that the AC units are screened for City Code 3116.15 with standards for alteration, as well as an appropriate style doors chosen from the Victorian Village guidelines. And if you'll notice, I believe this is also a 2-panel door. So we can continue that discussion with this application. Basis for recommendation is City Code 3116.11, the standards for alteration, as well as City Code 3116.13, the standards for site improvement, the Victorian Village guidelines regarding windows and doors, and the Victorian Village guidelines regarding fences and yards. And Commissioner Skinner, I'll hand it back to you to swear in.
Yeah, thanks. And state your name for the record, please.
Yes, Logan Fitch. Grant Knoll. We do.
Good. So whatever you presented, you'd like to add.
Yeah, I think staff did a great job summarizing. We don't oppose anything that staff said. Mainly, we were hoping this could be a sounding board to be able to kick back smaller items for staff approval. We knew the door was going to be in question. We wanted to see kind of what was actually typical of what you guys just talked about. If, given what was there previously, does it have to be full wood for that entry door off the rear? And then what staff would want to see for, and maybe what is typical of screening? Is it just, a dog ear fence that is an approved fence? Or not a true dog ear, but an approved Victorian Village fence style. And lastly, making sure that tricorn black, a color we've used historically, is still deemed appropriate by the commission. So maybe we start with the doors.
we can start there. So we're gonna talk about door, we'll talk about the treatment to the deck, egress, talk about the maintaining lattice work that was there previously.
Big upgrade. But
Lattice work would be up to code nowadays.
yeah, the whole structure was, there's a reason we're here.
Although
A little, this was a trim repair for
Yeah.
rotted fascia. And next thing we knew, it was pretty much a condemned back.
If it was holding up most of the
Yeah,
porch, so.
so. Mhm.
yes, they did have the approval to replace some boards and do a couple of things, and then it was just kind of like, oh, we replaced the entire structure.
It just got, we peeled back the onion and it got worse. But we did go, like for like in design, massing, style. Again, yeah, the door, obviously, we're open to change and, screening those AC units we're open to as well.
So my question is, do you need the door?
So that doorway goes straight down into a common area basement. We've had a lot of issues with homeless people in the area breaking into stuff. So at least that door does need some kind of security so people aren't getting washer and dryers stolen, stuff like that.
So as you can see in those photos, tenants have private ingress egress through their own doors, which are, existing, but more typical of a door you would see in Victorian Village. This is truly a utility door to that basement storage area.
Well, I guess I follow up on my comment from the previous application, if you caught what I said there. I said, it's not, it's that application. I said, if they had installed a steel door, we would have a much easier conversation. This is a steel door, that's not gonna fly. So, I think that in terms of trying to compare, what we're just doing, I want to be careful here, kind of, because it, just pointed out, it's another 2-panel door that was replaced without, approval. And this being a little bit easier, situation. However, the material, because this is not a front-facing door, what has been our standard?
So,
I've got something in my mind, but I want to make sure it's
yeah,
accurate.
so the commission will need to discuss, if we consider this like a main entryway. But if we're looking just typically at a kind of a standard house that has the main entry that's, say, facing the street, the office's position has been if there are doors on the side or the rear, those can be wood, metal, or fiberglass. The metal and fiberglass have to be smooth, they can't be textured.
Okay,
So there's a little bit more flexibility there.
you do allow steel. Okay. Possibly, okay, I think that. And but the paneling, 4 panels, 6 panels, what's the?
It would need to meet the guidelines.
So if I'm hearing correctly, smooth would be deemed inappropriate.
Yes, not flat, but not, so some fiberglass doors have a faux wood grain texture.
Yep. No, correct, okay. And that's something we can work with staff, as long as it's
Yeah.
okay.
So as long as the, commission comes to a consensus and, decides on, what's an appropriate material as well as, if they're pointing each the styles and guidelines, that could always be something to work with staff. But
Okay.
we can let them get kind of a little.
Yes,
there.
yep, absolutely.
Well, so the entryway thing, I think seems to be solved, and deeming this not a main entryway, the entrance to the basement, right, the dying entrance,
And it's not on the primary stuff.
and it's not. So I think we can clear that, so
That gives flexibility in terms of material, in terms of style, it seems like it needs to match the other four doors. But this is more original. It's the original house, but it is more consistent. So, and then grouping in four little door panels, the upper and lower.
but as a solid door. That would,
So at that point, it would be kind of not like.
and that's definitely the guidelines.
If that's the solid version. That would.
Right, that's right. Yeah, like, I would agree, I just don't know the C lot. Those, that format with also.
It's typically exterior doors, for example.
Right. Circle back.
So. Two of these 4 doors are actually that.
But it's a lot of reflection in there, solid. Door, this application.
I guess.
style of door itself is available. And I think it's interesting getting this one right after the last one. On the viewpoint of,
For discussion.
well, the viewpoint of many doors versus one door. Easier dialogue to suggest changing out one door. But it's also setting precedent of changing one in fall.
So I will note that the four doors here, I had them take those pictures just because I got a little nervous. One of them was boarded to make sure we had it done through additional work without approval. So these doors have been there for, I don't know how many years. They have not replaced them. They're not asking to replace them. They were just addressing a staff's concern that the doors were still there and they weren't being changed. So these ones, because they're not working on, I'm not going to ask them to do anything or update it. It'll be a different discussion if and when they're ready to replace them.
Has, it's got lights, yeah, which makes sense at that time, so.
Yeah.
I don't know if that door is like that, one with just solid, what, 6 or 7 panels, all same size.
That almost feels like it might be like a mid-century.
Well, not to be from craftsman, but still.
Yeah, I'm craftsman wouldn't fit with this time period.
What time period is this from?
I do not know off the top of my head, and I'm trying to, we're going to reference the guidelines for the time period we're doing it. So I want to say it was like the late, good God, like 1880s, 1910s that a lot of these structures were built. And by a lot, I mean the ones that are primarily historic, you're definitely gonna have some in various states.
Looks like
A lot, but I think there's just some,
Looks like late teens.
that's what I would guess. Which puts you right at the craftsman and era.
Yeah.
True, but that wouldn't be a craftsman style.
No, it's not,
No.
but in terms of woodwork, right, or
Yeah,
doors,
but then several by.
it would have been Victorian, so.
So I'm gonna say if we don't know what style is there, we probably shouldn't go too far down the rabbit hole, because we do have code and guidelines. Unless you guys have any historic documentation of what is historic.
Well, there wasn't a historic door there.
Right.
Yeah, no, but there may have been historic pictures of other doors that we might be able to reference, but I don't have anything
No.
past 1989, so I'm not much help.
Yep.
Well, let's maybe come back to the door and chew on that for a moment. Let's talk about the removal placement from deck. There.
Sounds like it's primarily safety.
Yeah, I mean, is that, what was it, what was the reasoning for reducing the number of stairways or the exits off the back there? Was it just security or?
There's code, like going into the, for BZA code requirements, new standards. The old stair was non-compliant. It encroached our neighbor's property line, I think both into right of way on the alley and the rear. It was really just, again, we didn't want to do this. It was not in the budget. It was not, it just evolved as it was unsafe condition for our tenants. And just had to kind of just bring it up to modern standards while still trying to hold true as much as possible what was there existing with a like for like design.
I think I'm generally okay. Structure and then those modifications, you got that screening stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, the screening, I think, I hope there's an opportunity there, just how that, certainly the style of that thing comes right off of this structure supported, so looking at the guidelines of what's allowable, and then coming up with a solution that feels like a part of that system in a way.
So I'll offer a comment on some of the things we have seen for screening.
Yeah.
I know we've seen like fencing the backyard, which probably isn't appropriate in this case, but we've also seen plants. So screening is open to interpretation. If we want to have, you know, or not we, but if the applicant would like to add some additional like grasses or some kind of flowers that would grow and block them, or if they.
I don't think so.
Enough space.
I don't think
I don't think you could even do a solid fence without choking off the areas. So I agree. If anything, if you're looking at the lattice or the thing, the horizontal,
Okay,
is something that can screen it visually, but not block out the air.
yeah, so they're one of kind of the form of what would be the disturbs.
Yeah, I think that's essentially,
Does that make sense? If this was a normal underskirt, the porch there, looking at those examples.
Trying to
we're just kind of
continue it out.
Forward, we're turning out a little bit, but that I agree that it starts to gain the spirit of screening, but allowing that airflow would be a solution.
it's tight.
Yeah.
And I love plants there, but there's not space. Like,
Could you bring up the current photo, please? Of where they stand. I also make sure anything
Property line and the walkway.
right
Really don't have a ton of room.
where they currently sit.
You got to do 3 on that right side, 1 in between the 2 stairs is the only place it'll fit and keep it out of either neighbor property line or the alley.
Could we continue that trim out and close it?
It should really come off and, because you're.
So I guess originally they were never covered, right? Historically. Well, very true. Sorry, before what we had to do. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
So, so there was a sidewalk there before, right? But the front of the units, seeing what the plan is. What's that? Oh, there it is.
It's on that first page, we have to screen that.
So it's sidewalk again, okay.
Mhm.
And the photos also show that fairly short fence on the other side of that sidewalk. Like probably screened, like right that bottom photo there. View from the street, that is screened to some extent.
Is that fence going back up?
that's the.
The neighbor's fence?
That is the,
On,
Looks like it
on that bottom left.
on the neighboring
of
property.
that parcel.
well, it's missing access a little bit, so
Well,
it's wide.
you're also trying to screen.
Yeah.
The hard thing is if you put like any kind of screening on it.
I think the stairs cover the
Why do you have?
The stairs, and hide the one to the left.
I mean, there
I
are.
mean, the stairs would block considerable. Could we squeeze something straight off the back or down? You can't get me any more
I think so.
stairs.
You can screen from the alley.
So I could get us right here. So straight away back.
Right side on
Your sidewalks right there is a problem.
So where we were just kind of do a sidebar of, you know, do you just do it on that Allen side, do you do it with an extension there?
That's actually what we were just discussing. Up to where the side would be. But it sounds like anything would help.
Yeah.
And the thought would be that we would continue that design style,
Same.
almost like a floating wall.
So that's at least honoring the screen that been there previously that was stair for reconnaissance. So
Yep.
Straight on, really, it's already obstructed, facing a fence, then facing an alley. It's the.
That one.
Okay.
That's a one thing. We just need to make sure it's. The color, we just need to make sure that that's
so
provided.
I've approved tricorn black in numerous fashions. of applications throughout Victorian Village. And the only hesitation I would have about a color is if it was too bright. And we viewed the, I it's very dark. Trust me, I know, I've had people ask to have the entire houses painted this, which, more power to them. The office views paint colors for siding and trim, and I would, as well as like decks, or not decks, but like porches and such things as temporary, because the sun fades it out, the weather, does its thing to get it to peel an alligator. So it has to be touched up every so many years. So tricorn black is something that I would prove it as staff. And it's not something we want to necessarily go down the path of just being like, well, we don't like the black color.
That's good. So we'll go back to the north.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Continue, let them have an option that they, fits the guidelines.
Or do you want to move that?
Well, we get that, yeah, it's fine.
I guess I also wanted, like, to know what's the. Because
Treat the door in that.
right now, it just seems like fire.
So is that going to be finished with any kind of siding or?
So that'll all get a board and batten style look. You can kind of see on the left bottom porch. So that door will get trimmed out and then a board and batten finish around it. Which is what was there when we prior.
And have the and with that board fat be black.
Yeah,
It'll all be painted the same, yep.
And the doors painted.
Probably on the same color palette of Sherwin-Williams. I think we've used mopboard black in the past, something like a complementing to tricorn on the same color, but we would go through and make sure, full staff approval before painting that door color.
I'd be okay if they added it to this application as well, so they wouldn't necessarily have to wait
True.
to put it in the application. As long as the commission is okay with it too.
I mean, just for clarity too, so the side of the stairway, we added board and batten as well.
yeah, anywhere there's
It's solid black.
sheer, yeah.
So- Okay. So, any other discussion?
Are we able to add a quick item?
Sure.
So the only concern, and I would say if possible, just to put a request in to the commission, if we would be able to work on that rear door just directly with staff and not have to come back, even if it comes to the point that we align on with staff that I don't think she'll make me put a mahogany door for an ancillary door. She may.
Well, great.
I'm getting
Some idea for mahogany, yeah, but given that we discuss it's an ancillary entrance, it's not a primary facade. I think staff mentioned that there are approvals in the guidebook that it could be a flush metal, as long as we work within the parameters of the guidelines. So she could send us any of the, and we're open to it. We know it has to confine. Just
Yeah, if you guys are comfortable, know that it needs to be changed.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
truthfully,
we
that
are.
door was always
We needed
kinda
it for
just temporary,
security.
so
Yeah,
we
yep.
threw what I had in stock, so.
And yeah, we can have that.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And you can do it all as, if you're approving everything else, you can do it as one motion and just note. Yeah, perhaps some of the commissioners would like to give poor Commissioner Sprite a break because he did do 3 motions for like the last.
Move to approve the application COA 250023 for 762 Park Street. To approve the application with the condition that staff approval is for replacement.
No further actions in this partial screen fence.
And to extend screening to the seal the units in the street.
And that was, getting to staff.
Mostly staff.
All right, I'm gonna ask for some clarifying items. So with the door replacement, with the doors to be wood, smooth fiberglass or a smooth metal to meet, the styles of Victorian Village guidelines. And then with the extended screening, do you want to match the current porch, skirting or to be the lattice? The perpendicular lattice?
Match the current.
Yes, given the very small area of it, yes. Yes.
Oh, yes, yeah, I think that'll look good.
I'm going to ask for one more clarification that we're approving the possible different materials on the door because we are considering this door to be a rear door, correct?
Right. Do we need any clarification on things?
Paint color for door to be submitted to staff prior to issuance.
Yes.
All right, so since we're making so many modifications, everything okay with you?
Yeah, it does sound good, yep.
Just want that
Yep.
on the record. I know there was
Absolutely.
discussion, but I
Yep.
like having it right before they vote on it. Right.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the time.
All right, perhaps Sean will show up shortly, but we'll continue kind of rolling on without him and move to application number 4, which is 935 Neal Avenue. This application is to remove and replace the standing seam roof to match the existing dimensions. The standing seam metal roof is repeated the Hartford green. Box gutters are to be relined in copper and reflecting wood underneath for the current lining and replacing to match existing as needed. Commissioners at the business meeting requested a photo of the front of the house. HPO staff supports the replacement of the metal roof and relining of the box gutters, but does not support the color green of the proposed roof as it does not meet city code and guidelines. Red or gray, like the original valley metal required for roofing, would be historically appropriate and supported based on documentation of the original material. Also, city code 3116.11, the standards for alteration. The applicant may also consider a copper roof, though not as common, could be appropriate along the avenue. And I did duplicate something, I'll repeat it down on the latter half here. And HBO staff is not aware of any other examples of an approved green roof in the area. The applicant has supplied 957 Neal Avenue as an example of the green roof in the area, and that roof is copper and has patina. The applicant has also supplied examples of the green paint colors on houses, and HPO does not restrict paint colors as these are seen as temporary applications to the house, which need redone on a regular basis, nor does HPO staff require historical colors for this reason. Bright colors are discouraged, as we touched upon in the last application. HPO staff does require colors for roofs due to historical precedent. Roofs in Victorian Village were historically slate, which is why the shingles from the approved list are various shades of gray to emulate what would have been there if people are replacing their slate roofs and replacing them with asphalt. And there would have historically been metals on some of the roofs, and these would have been copper or tern, which is a combination of tin and lead. And the copper roofs, typically, if they're historic, would have patinaed to green. This roof, metal roof, is historic, and likely the original metal roof that was painted red. The orange that we are now seeing is due to the sun bleaching, and staff recommends continuation of the application to allow for the applicant time to update the proposal to something more in line with city code and guidelines. Basis for recommendation is City Code 3116.11, the standards for alteration, as well as the Victorian Village guidelines on roofs. The Historic Preservation Office roofing shingle list, the U.S. Department of the Interior National Park Service Cultural Resource, the Historic Preservation Brief number 4 regarding roofing for historic buildings. And I'm just going to announce on the record, because that is a great break. We currently we have joining us, the commission chair, Sean Conyers.
Wow.
Good time, Sean. So you just walked in. I finished the staff report for 935. Yes, please.
Okay. Just for the record, Robert Dodson is recusing himself. Okay, for the applicant, state your name for the record.
Yes, this is Mark Wolf. I do. Historically, green roofs are been done because it represents the color of, or copper. If you put term metal would be historically painted green. We'd have those replaced all the time with evergreen, Hartford green. And actually there's 5 blocks down south on Neal, the brand new building at 655 Neal is a green, brand new. It was within the last 2 years, it was just installed with brand new green steel. So that's 5 blocks down from where this house is. So there is numerous buildings in the area. That is 6 by 5. It's down by Lucky's Market, just that south of Lucky's Market.
And that's on that west side of Neal Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
That would not be within Victorian Village. There's Lucky's Market and that kind of plaza is a chunk out, that's outside the district. So that wouldn't have been reviewed.
Okay. Yeah, this is like, yeah, I was driving down Neal, it was like, oh, wow, there's a green. I mean, that's a big one, but I would say those color patterns towards the bottom are very historically correct colors that you see normally. The old term is no longer used because there was used with lead, so it's not a product anymore. So mostly it is a G90 product, which is a galvanized steel, and it's usually powder coated. And those are more historically correct colors. You have your greens, you have your reds, bronzes, because it does represent more of a copper color as it ages, as it patinas, it turns into a it gets sometimes to that darker green, and that's usually what those greens are. The red is more like a tenner's red. You would see that more like with a black slate roof.
Sorry, just over here.
So do we want to talk about our, is the roof replacement and the copper guard? Are we all okay with that?
Yeah, my only concern would be making sure that the similar metals are separated.
The copper's at the bottom, so
So it should be.
there's no galvanic, yeah, with the separation of it. Yep.
But there were maybe 4 roof panel types submitted on list of which I think I would like. Those panel types are being proposed.
Snap lock.
And I think what the intermediate will be, right? Some of them are quite wavy or have corrugations or something. I think the smooth panel would most appropriate for placement. I don't know if really any of those other profiles I would consider appropriate because they, the existing roof is very flat. It's very little profile standings. So I think it would be beneficial to have it clarify the application, which one of these panels are being. Same with other details. I think there's a lot of different patient details submitted, lots of ways that the roof is done. And while it's all just standard details, we aren't clear on which.
So Jose, if you can go to one of the current photos.
You said do map block, right?
Correct, which, yeah,
Yeah, and so this is the current, so the roof here has box gutters. So they're relining those, they're doing that metal roof. The details are just that, some of the details that we are seeing are just standard ones that come with the cut and product sheets.
Sure.
So-
I think it would be better there were less of those, and this was more project specific. And
It was
it would demonstrate a greater degree of appropriateness if there were clarifications.
That first picture is that roof. It's just bronze versus green. The first one you showed earlier. There. That is the exact style roof. It's just different colors. Snap block roof, and scene, smooth. That one has snow guards on it. It's the only difference, and it does not have box cutter on it. So we're not changing the box cutters. We're actually putting the box cutters, same historically correct copper, and then the roof standing seam as is, and just changing the colors to the owner would prefer the green, which versus the orange or the red color now. I can, yeah, I would agree with you absolutely that, yeah, it needs to be flat like that and submitted as such. No problem switching that.
I think that's their primary, so it's a flat versus.
Like, maybe it's not block on the point.
And then it comes out.
Yeah. Let me start with getting at the picture sideways. So there's in colors palette, which is there are they're called premium colors that would be more natural metals. Are those just finishes and not? It's not the material. The material is still galvanized steel.
You're correct. Yes, it's all G90 material, which is galvanized metals, and those are just the powder coated. Especially when you look at the premium colors, especially the one that says copper,
Okay.
it looks more like a yellow mustard in my opinion versus copper. Yeah.
Well, it's not going to
It's
patina.
correct. Correct.
Same thing with the tea green stuff.
Right.
Yeah, those are just more so because they have a within the paint, so they have a little bit of flexibility to them, it's just a little bit different between the process, so that's why those are premium versus the state. How much better or a month for this color without that shedding or I'm gonna say reflective on to.
And staff's opinion is that it should be red.
Staff's opinion is it should either be red, a gray, or if they wanted to do copper, I know that's the more expensive option, so like it is on the table, but understandable if if you were to pick it. If I would have said we could have discussed the patina green, but it sounds like that's a hard no.
And just to clarify, the material now is kind of that lead, hybrid lead. What was that?
The term,
The term metal is no longer used because it had lead in it, so it's more of a just galvan.
Materially, what was there no longer there.
Well, and that material was pretty much always painted. It was usually painted tin or scrap.
That's fine.
yeah, and
Or was it always painted?
most of the time.
Most of the time, if it wasn't tin or scrap, it was gray or something white.
Yeah, white would not be a color that we support.
That's normal.
I think it's very helpful seeing more context of the home. And I appreciate the rest of it, really, the long metal, which is the gray color, there is some contrast between the real brick beside, and this is an equal forage condition, I don't know what the appropriate, what we're trying to match here. It wants to stand out on its own, and it wants to complement the other roof lines, we want to blend in. Right now you have kind of this, a couple different of these. And they're all a little bit different.
So if you go with red, it's not going to match anything.
Right. Yes.
But we're not in the business of necessarily matching thing unless we're painting to match. That's typically after a sun fade, and that's not what's being requested.
So the owner, is the owner interested in any other color besides the green?
Not really. Yeah, yeah, copper, for perspective, it just went up another $30 a sheet, and like it's 5 times probably more expensive, right, than that. So yeah.
To, hey, let me just kind of think about this since it's been a couple other projects that have come in front of us related to this, just in the, it's been a while, but there was one, I think, on the park, and, that one, I think before it was Cardinal, right, when he suggested that the team felt like that part of the red wasn't appropriate, so the colonial red was more in common with the, with that condition.
Agreed.
That was like what was talked about.
And I will just note for the record that 717 Denison
Okay,
Avenue.
okay.
If the commission may remember it, if had a lot of things going on that the owner has been working on over the years.
Stop it, work, exception, I was in front of that was being evaluated at that time. Or a gray, right? An opportunity for a gray to be introduced that may offer a relief. If there's a color concern with red, and which feels like that may be an opportunity. Obviously, I don't know about ownership's perspective with that, but that may give them, I'm gonna say, a little more options, but still be somewhat, in alignment with that.
Okay.
So I'm just going to ask, are we talking about one gray or are we talking about a range of gray that the commission would be okay with?
I found there a couple stuff on very.
When you look at and that's why I go back to the rest of the group, there's a model available there that I think complemented somehow. So, like, would it be a situation of saying tone wise, if you went back to those color palettes that, anything from granite, to graphite or something like that. So like the team would start to look at that range and say, hey, what within that range is appropriate that the homeowner could choose from that may be in alignment with the guidelines, but at the same time give them that opportunity of maybe being able to learn something.
I would even say the burnished shade.
Would like a bronze, would you be okay with it? Like that first picture of the newer, the copper gutters, that was a bronze, would that be something you would look at? Yes,
What's it happening?
correct. Yeah, yeah. That would be more of a copper before it turns to that patina as bronze is that's what that's supposed to represent, color palette wise.
Sean, I think you kind of articulated what I just struggle with, the kind of throw out there at the beginning of looking to make sure that we're willing to complement the reddish tones that are part of to complement the goal line. Trying to complement the contrast and photos in place. Green doesn't really. Now you do work at like the charcoal, which when I look at it, so which next to with that picture of the roof does still seem to be within striking distance, but it also has a touch of green in it. So that work from one end perspective. But again, I think there's a lot of range in there of availability. I think the one thing to kind of think about too is the flexibility within that range of grades, just making sure that we one that is not selected, that is too low.
Mhm.
We have some diversity to that one, so I think the goal is just looking at from what the homeowner is looking at, potentially is to make it kind of recede a little bit from that perspective.
Mhm.
And so, is it the burnished slate, or is it one of those, green tones that can accomplish that, but then be on the line with the guidelines or have been
and talked about today, because I feel like looking at, I think it's the patino green, that one is more so geared towards being able to 100% replicate oxidized copper,
Mhm.
which then I think the homeowner would not
Right.
want that because it's in alignment with the guidelines, but I don't think it's accomplishing what potentially making what their product was.
I think the challenge here, right, I don't know how we're gonna get around this, but I'm trying to think how it is like, I don't want to be sitting here and picking out 6 different grades, but we have that, okay. But that's the most efficient way to move this forward, is saying, all right, here's the colors that
Well,
work.
could we go with this color was starting to get too dark, that would border on black, and we want something that would be a little bit more historic? Yes, the
Feel
applicant.
better just putting a circle around
Yeah.
something.
I mean, is that more helpful than just saying a gray, or if you want the red, it's the.
Yeah, it's historically, because I mean, we work on historical homes, whatever. The 4 colors that we've always meant to Columbus would be, we call it battleship gray, tenors red, bronze, and pretty much the green. So when we're painting things, so we have a color palette of those 4 colors. So I could have, I would say some of those would match pretty close. Those are paints that we usually get from like Creative Paints, whatever. We could match, if that's what you're looking for, I could match some of those colors and submit those.
Colors are here, be acceptable.
Well, yeah, that's what you're saying, but you could match their usual style colors to the closest one. So they would still use the pen.
I think if the applicant would want to submit options of like perhaps A, B, C, the commission would be open to that as well, if they wanted to.
So it comes down to basically a medium gray or.
Is staff comfortable with making the final decision on a version of gray if that's what comes forward?
Yes,
Okay.
although, since, the owner that we do have here can't talk to us, and you've got the applicant representing them. I would think it might be best to continue this, just so that we have that consistent standard, like we have, if we're proposing to change the application, but, and we do have, the applicant here. And they also might run a little cautious about agreeing to something before going back to the owner, and we are trying to remain kind of that ethical line as well. So it might be best for us just to continue to, get their feedback, and we'll have until the April 17th deadline, which whoever can email me and let me know how we're moving forward. If it does get continued.
Well, that's what I was trying to.
So we don't have the owner here,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what I'm nervous about.
But whose name is on the quote? The owner's name on the application.
Well, so the applicant's name is the one who submitted it. You also do have the owner. So here, I'm gonna ask you, what are you comfortable doing? 'Cause I'm doing a lot of.
Rise to approve.
Yeah,
I would need to get ultimate approval by color from the owner.
So
Yes.
maybe we could take.
yeah.
Well, we could still do staff approval.
But there's colors you're comfortable with approving and that I could talk to the owner and then we can get that as staff approved. I think that would be, if you guys are okay, that would be okay. If you give me like 4 or 5 colors or whatever, which sounds like we're,
I think if you're changing the application to something that would be more in line with our office and the coding guidelines, I might be able to swing it around. Since it's been in front of the commission, it does make it a little tricky, so I would have to ask the historic preservation officer just to make sure that I'm not cutting corners, because that's the last thing I want to do on this application.
we do obviously a lot of work in the area with slate and stuff. Is there actually like, would you guys have a color palette that we could refer to so try to help streamline some of this as we go forward as metals painted or restorations done?
Well, I think we would agree that we would all like copper, right? Let's just say that if that were an option, real copper. This secondary, this choice would be either the colonial red or a gray. And it's just picking the gray would be the challenge, right?
A medium gray.
A medium gray.
Okay.
Reference battleship gray, I'm looking at slate gray, whatever that gray is, that would be what staff would.
Gotcha. Okay.
Is it Just from a standpoint of being able to help the applicant, is it okay to say, you know, anything from granite, I'm looking at the third, I think it's the third one down, so anything from granite all the way up to ink well, and that gives them range to be able to, you know, to come back.
They just name them.
Yeah,
I
that's,
think
I just
giving,
want to try to.
giving me the range would be okay, because I'll also reference this. And I can, if you're gonna be like from the granite to inkwell, I can go in and take those things. Cause you guys all have your devices there. Mine's just for taking notes. And I can't, even though we've got the screen right here, it's still too far away for me to make out that little text. So I can reference it. And then as well as our applicant goes back to the owner, and if the owner does say, no, I want that green, then they'll be back, because it is their right to, present to the commission to further have a discussion.
Looking at the chart, left to right, top to bottom. That range.
So I didn't know musket gray and birch.
I think the browns we're talking about, the applicant. Sort of being browns, right? Browns would be.
So I'm gonna challenge that and ask you where have we historically seen that Victorian, because to me, the bronze typically is more of a brown. So it's just how does this meet Victorian guidelines? Not that it's not a fantastic color and it looks great on that roof that we saw at the beginning.
But two, not random. And yes.
Yes. and-
So
Burnish slate.
granite, cityscape, slate gray, musket gray, graphite, iron ore, do you want? That's
yeah, if anything, I would look at the first, and see how this one happen.
that, did you put over there?
It's just, I think it's that range, thinking about that range. And then I think it would be historically appropriate for the understanding of staff, or dedicate the homeowner that range. Because there's some cool ones in there that I feel like the homeowners probably not going to want to do, which is understandable, because they're more blue. So, but that range gives them.
But we're okay with anything I just listed plus the column there.
Yeah.
Seems like that, well, I think staff is kind of pushing us for.
Because if we can approve any of all above, then it's not really staff approval.
Just confirm with staff which one.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, I can do a motion on this is the one that. Okay, motion on application COA 2500213, 935 Neal Avenue, to approve the application as submitted with the follow.
I thought we were continuing.
Here we are, we're continuing still?
Well, so because they have to ask the owner for their,
Right, but they're gonna just come back to you and tell you which color.
but then they have to reapply. Because if we vote on it, this closes out the application.
So wait, what?
Yes.
I'm confused.
We continue.
Yes.
But we're continuing to allow staff approval.
Like if you
The
could,
staff approval with approval, the continuation is, we're
Is
not.
it clarification for staff?
Right. We don't need to have, do another round.
We are putting really strict guidelines
yes,
on this without the applicant, without the owner's voice.
Right. But we're giving a list of specific colors that are allowed.
We are, but we don't know if those are the colors that the applicant, the owner is okay.
I see.
Yeah.
Something, so we're continuing, but we're also giving some strong recommendations of
Yeah.
what will be within the range.
yes, and what would be acceptable to code and
And that may
guidelines?
allow staff to quickly turn this around. Should we set up a subcommittee just to have on hand that if you need them?
No, because the subcommittee takes just as long as I hear it most of the time. And plus, I also need to check with my boss
Yeah.
about, if we do change it, because it's already been in front of the commission. Because it has been a while, it's been a long while since we've had something that is like, well, possibly if they update it, and I want to say I can, but I also don't want to put all of my eggs in that basket and be wrong.
And I guess that's why I'm suggesting that if we set up this subcommittee that is there for you, if after you check in, you're not on like that.
Yeah, but if we're subcommittee, then we're approving it, and then we go back to that problem of we don't have the owner here to confirm. Because I like having that on record, that everybody's okay with the changes that have been made. And if they aren't okay, then they have to go through the whole hassle of reapplying. And as Commissioner Skinner can probably tell everybody, because he just had to do an application, it's not easy to do that.
Well, so let me clarify one thing, just to be, if I get it, I understand. But, you know, we often don't have the owner, we have the applicant, right? So I'm gonna ask you just directly, with the colors I listed off, were any of those something that you can approve as you sit here, or would you have to check on?
I had to check on all of the others.
So that's fine, all right.
And that's also why I'm running really cautious, because he said kind of at the beginning that, you know, they really want that green. So I want to be respectful to the owner who is not present, as well as the one that is very kindly recusing himself from this application. And I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just, you know.
Okay, so I'm gonna try this again, amend my motion, for application COA 2500213, 935 Neal Avenue, to continue the application to allow the applicant to refine their,
Explore other color options.
thank you, explore other color options, including the following: burnished slate, granite, cityscape, slate gray, musket gray, graphite, iron ore, inkwell, or colonial red, or doing copper instead of galvanized steel.
Second that.
Thank you.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is
Well, thank you all for your patience.
Thank you.
Good night.
And then I will ask if we could have a quick 5-minute break before moving on to our last application. I don't want to hold it up, but also I have to be quick one.
Okay, awesome.
All right, and that lets Commissioner Dodson.
Okay. 5-minute break. And we said 4:45.
So is that still recording?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Not that it matters, I just skip for.
I just have my outdoor file for everybody, but I don't know what's happening. Oh, we did, I thought we did 5 minutes. No, so just. 6 is up. Oh, right. Okay. It's a whole 6:30. Charges these particular cop. 3x, 2x. I mean, I know it's terrible.
It's a it's a big converter. Yeah.
You know, go when that's out of line. I got division power, I was trying to get the division power, okay. Door open. But, you know, at that time, it was a 3 years. So, yeah. Should give you some.
Right, we will wait until Jose gets back, because I don't think I can steer and read things at the same time. You're fine. We're still waiting for Jose to continue driving the show.
Okay.
Ready? All right, so our final application for this evening is number 6, which is 721 North High Street. This application is to install a 9-foot by 52-foot 6-inch flat awning, which would be 10 feet high with an overall height of 13 feet. The awning would have a temporary enclosure as well. Staff has included commissioner comments from the October 9th and July 10th, 2024 hearings. Commissioners at the business meeting requested a section drawing showing how the awning would attach to the building. They also requested clarification on how the proposed awning would cover the elevation. Specifically, they noted that the drawing, the location elevation on page 2 showed a dotted line of the entire architectural detail above the storefront. The commission noted that the applicant should come to the hearing prepared to discuss how the proposed design aligns with previous feedback that had been provided. Commissioners should offer design feedback that can be utilized by the applicant to further refine the proposal at a future hearing. Basis for staff recommendation is City Code 3116.11, standards for alteration, the short north design guidelines on awnings and canopies, as well as public right-of-way, private property, and the short, oh good, I think I copied and pasted twice, but awnings and canopies, City Code 3116.13, the standards for site improvement. And with that, Sean, I'll hand it over to you with a note. Thank you for staying with us through that break.
I haven't been sworn in either.
My last. John said we-
Oh, if you want to keep chairing, go ahead.
The applicant say you need for the record.
Yeah, John Ingwerson. I do.
What it is.
Great. So we've been here before talking about this one. There's an economic need for something to happen here that's appropriate. The very first one was a pretty simple canvas awning from Capital City Awning with some shop drawings, and it was an objection to the fact that it was continuous. And however, there's a bourbon bar directly across the street with a 3-bay canvas awning that stretches the same length. At any rate, we came in with a slightly modified version of that awning a second time. And then I believe it was October that we had a very modern Italian, very thin profile, almost sort of very modern go away detailing, so that it was very minimalist as far as the visual impact. You know, it was probably a little closer as far as your guys. But you said not yet, not for Columbus, not for Victorian Village. This one is conceptual. This is um, this is the awning cover at the Warwick Hotel, Midtown Manhattan. I believe it's West 54th. And the owner at Forno would like to replicate that and run it for 50 feet. Maybe, I don't recall the exact length, but it's right around 51, 52 feet. And have it have the same kind of cover in the winter that this picture shows of the Warwick piece. Those panels would come down, the side panels would come down in the summer or in good weather. But the idea of the canopy would also be that it would be lit. It would have the same kind of gold detailing on there, and that it would be a very urban piece along Buttles. Just to address the staff comments on the way it would be attached. It would be attached to the limestone and with columns. Minor 3x3 steel tube. But as it attached to the building on the piers, the limestone piers between the architectural features of those transom, the metal transom pieces. Now, as far as the fact that it would be covering those pieces, it would actually be enclosing them. They would be untouched. They would be lit from the inside so that they would be, an amenity, a very nice architectural amenity from the inside. And if you're walking on the street, you'd be able to see through the panels, which are plastic. You'd be able to see all the detailing of the storefront. And there's 2 bays of storefront to the west, 1 bay of storefront yet to the east, and then as you turn the corner on High Street, you're seeing that same sort of fenestration and architectural detailing. This would just be a little more peekaboo, but it would still be an element of the users of the building would be able to appreciate. I think that Buttles is, Buttles gets pretty heavily used. However, it's screened. It's got street trees all the way along on both sides. And this, obviously the restaurant owner would like to be able to, he has enough business that this would be heavily used. And he's willing to make the commitment to, and the reason we're talking conceptual at this point is that we would use the same manufacturer. It's a company out of the Bronx that would do the whole package. They'd come in and they'd field measure this thing, produce the shop drawings, and he would assemble the canopy as an exact profile match of what we're looking at here at Warwick. Sure. Question, whatever.
I will. Discussion.
One question, it would be helpful to answer what was the difference of this one compared to some of it. I think that helps us kind of put it in context. Just in terms of us being able to stay consistent.
I think this one is going heavier, ceiling more, and touching the building more, serving, whatever. More. I also, I mean, it's bordering on its addition to the building of business, and which I'm not sure how that works, right? Especially if it's not supported off of the smallest.
One comment I have is that during commission, at least a portion of that detailing still visible from space of back towards the building, but I would actually argue that it's not just that lower section of the detailing, but it's also the vegetation and the extended beat. So this still disrupts that. Tree. So I definitely struggle with that argument, but still honoring some of the from so it's all about what it's saying, which is from the street stand, but it's true architectural feature.
Can we feel like, could I ask this question and I ask this question as kind of outline the business meeting to see that I'm able to be able to answer that, but I'm going to understand the meeting or just, okay. But, so I think in the business meeting, I think it was kind of like notes, it says, can you discuss how the proposed design aligns with your previous feedback that had been provided? So I think some of the, there's probably been a couple of rounds of feedback that's been
It's not.
there's been a couple of rounds of feedback and just kind of appreciative of you guys continuing to find maybe options that may satisfy some of that feedback. But in order for us not to provide feedback that's contrary to maybe prior discussions, can you articulate what makes this one different? Or and how does it respond to the feedback that's been provided before?
Yeah, this is more urban in character for certain. I thought I talked a little bit about the stylistic piece. This is definitely looks like an addition. It is an addition. And it's another way to serve the function of sheltering dining space. Do I think it adds to the streetscape? Yeah, it's undeniably a much more forceful addition. It has its own character. It doesn't compete with the building or the fenestration. Yeah, it covers some of it up, but it doesn't cover it all. And it's of a scale that doesn't overwhelm in my, in my architectural opinion. It speaks for itself as far as this is part of this dining room. And it's a cover, and I think it adds to the building.
No. I think that's helpful. Because I think that for us, we want to give feedback that's consistent. You know what I mean?
You're to protect, the feel of the urban space in Victorian Village, as is Italian Village across the street. But there's lots of stuff that's going on down there that's new. The criteria for new additions is that it doesn't try to replicate the historic, what do I want to say, vernacular of the existing building. That the thing would be temporary for the owner, but I think this thing has got legs. And I think that, it would be as a pedestrian or as somebody that's driving down High Street and looks down Buttles, that it would have visual appeal. Obviously, it has that appeal in Manhattan. There's no shortage of buildings of that era and that age in Manhattan either, and it doesn't seem out of place. The owner saw it, was taken by it, and said, I will copy this thing religiously and put it up if it can get approved. And, the last time around, you guys asked me to talk to the planning department. I had a conversation with Chris Lohr. It specifically asked about. Oh, I know you are. I understand. I know Jamie as well. I've been. And the issue was that they don't. You guys are going to perform your function. That there's no recommendation that they could give. They said, yeah, there are guidelines, but if you want to do this, and you want to pay the freight, propose it and keep going.
What are the guidelines for, especially
So you look to the short north design guidelines. As well as city code. And you'd also have to discuss, how are you reviewing it? Is it a structure? Is it an awning?
once it has legs, it's not. All of a sudden, if it has legs, then it's probably also a foundation.
Even if it's attaching to the building?
Yes. And I guess the question is, we're assuming it's regional enough, well. And that's a whole other ballgame there, is just understanding where this actually fits relative to the back.
It's part of a right-of-way lease that's in place. And that's already in place. I've spoken to Jerry Reiser about this. The current position of the city is that they don't want any attachment at grade, but there is all kinds of attachment throughout the city. They've sort of changed their position a couple different times over the years. When COVID hit, a couple restaurants went out. The people just left. So the city didn't have anything in their budget to remove any of these things in the right of way, and it was a pain in the behind. But we've had some discussions with posting a bond for the removal of anything. The money in this thing isn't really an issue. These things can be taken care of with the planning of the project moving forward. They're not, what do I want to say? They're not terminal issues that can't be overcome.
Well, so let's take it back from a minute. Just go back to what we referenced in the past, because I think it gets. So there's a couple of things that are still troublesome, but I guess I will say this: I appreciate that the owner trying to come up with other solutions and continues to try to, find something that works. And I do appreciate, this is not the cheapest option by any means, in terms of getting what they're trying to do here. So I appreciate the effort from that perspective. However, some of the underlying items that were, that we thought as a commission were important, I think are not being addressed with this current design. One of those things was the fenestration, and that's, we talked about the awnings and how we wanted them separate to keep that look the same. And in particular, this case, covering up a historic feature of a building across the entire facade with those covering the cast iron details, such that they're no longer a feature of the building or the section of the building. You can, sure, if you're inside the canopy and it's on a summer day when the walls aren't up, okay, maybe you can see them still, but that's not in the spirit of what we're trying to preserve on the building. So I think this is just this really is not addressing that concern. It's just saying we're going to cover it.
Yeah, one point, if you look further down Buttles, that architectural feature runs out at the end, after the doorway. That's the last one. There's no more there. The idea that there's architectural balance and symmetry and a facade, and that there's an element on either side of it that's clearly part of the fenestration. I just, again, if everything has to be as it was, then we don't progress anywhere. And it doesn't remove it from the building. It just changes where you view it from. And if the canopy comes off, they're still there.
Cause permanent damage to it. I would say, if this were to go forward and if there's a bond that fixes any removal on the sidewalk, it would also have to address repairing the building, because as soon as you attach to any kind of attachment of this structure to that building, you're causing significant changes to the structure.
I disagree as an architect that have been practicing for 50 years. Hilti makes a very nice high-low threaded insert that's fine for limestone. When it's removed, you have a hole this big, and it can be patched with an appropriate epoxy and limestone dust, and you can almost make it disappear. And
Going over these cast irons.
no, it's not touching the cast iron anywhere.
Structure where it's touching in the 6
It-
inches or so in between the top of those little cast iron finials and the decorative limestone above it.
It's not touching any of it. It would cover it,
So
but
it's
not touch it. No, it would attach to the limestone piers, and it would completely miss any of the fenestration. There's no gap.
Cast iron.
What?
If there's not a gap in there, at some point, if it is sealing to the cast iron or to the stone, it is.
If you have 3 bays of structure and they are on the piers and they come back to the limestone piers and attach here and come out and down on a column at the 9-foot sidewalk level,
Sealing this awning to the building.
there would be attachment of the structure to the building, and then the cover over the top of the awning would come up to the building, and it would probably have a steel bar across there or an angle that would go to the other beams that are coming out from the building. And the beams would have an attachment with probably 2 high-low threaded fasteners.
So is the roof of this an awning material or a roof?
Awning material.
So the inside of what we're seeing there is an awning material with a really fancy.
Yes. With a fancy, yes.
So I'm going to make a suggestion. I think part of where we're ending up here is that it is conceptual and we don't have the details that we would need, because I agree with you. I'm like, Okay, you got a spinning.
It's a roof.
Right, it looks like, yes, and it's because we don't have the details showing that, and I understand why, right? We could get, if it hasn't gotten that far. You know, but she makes a very valid point in terms of the attachments, and also, you know, these finials and how are those play in and how are those gonna be addressed?
I heard you guys loud and clear the first 2 times, and this thing misses all of that structure, and I think I kind of included that in the description.
So what I'm saying is that's not readily apparent to us based on the materials we have.
Yeah, the details,
So,
the details aren't illustrated enough. Like, I would have assumed that is a roof structure with a membrane roof on it.
I would have thought the same thing, based on what.
It's all,
That is how it reads.
So yeah, the graphic and we see the wall, and it's hard to tell what happens. I will agree the way that elevation is portrayed, is illustrated, those finial tops are not represented in reality. That have to come up a bit, I think, to be over top of those certain feet. You can see them
okay,
to the left, so you zoom in on that.
yeah,
Part of what you're picking up on is that in reality, that will have to raise up to miss.
it would be slightly higher, I agree.
And it will also have to be slightly wider to let the spirits and completely surround this and not touch.
It won't touch it.
We're obviously, you know, there still is concern of any kind of attachments, that we are dealing with the best, mechanisms, materials available. There is still that, you know, potential concern of there could be some long-term damage, so we just have to be mindful of that. So we keep coming back to the permanence of this structure, which it seems like we've been a little bit more clarity on the actual section of detail of this, not just the elevation of the materials that are there. Better clarity on how this does truly miss that architectural feature. And then I think we still, I think we're challenged with, in whatever means it is, that we are still on the streetscape, we are covering that architectural feature. And that's, I think, we've been consistent with that piece of this throughout. That's a real challenge for us to be anything that covers that construction.
If it were an addition, it would have to cover something of the building. So if we talked about it in terms of an addition, are we conceptually at a point where we should go further with this? I mean,
And I think the conversation we've had part of the vision of this location, modifying that this will probably, that's not what we're intending to do, but it does get to really become a temporary solution.
Okay, so I think I was just trying to understand, when we look at the short term dialogue. Discussion about, you know, which one is an addition or is that, which one is. So in our past discussions, it was, I think that we were trying to make sure the building remains primary and this thing had a secondary, so to speak, attitude towards it, but without distraction to the property. And then it becomes a little bit further, it take on the stance of being an addition that has a primary visual kind of impact to it. So, and then that's where it kind of dances between the dialogue. So that's why I didn't want to really kind of talk about it in that manner, but I think we're trying to understand, like, where does it fall? So that way we can stay in alignment with the guidelines and address and be consistent in terms of the content that it provides.
I guess my client would ask you if he was sitting here as well. Do you think it'd be cool? And Do you think it would add to the city of Columbus? And do you think it would be a place that you would want to go just by looking at it? I mean, you know, as far as, here's a person that's into hospitality and he sees something like this and he goes, wow, that'd be great. You know, the idea, I know that we have, it can't be an addition because it's on a right of way that's leased. You know, you can't build in the right of way. I've been through that before with other code violations. But the question is, you know, does he want to engage somebody to actually produce shop drawings for this thing if it's not going to go anywhere? You know, it's a serious expense. And he's been here with, you know, these ideas have gotten progressively more expensive and more detailed in terms of what it is.
I think that's kind of the part of the underlying concern we have, or I will say we have, I speak very well. You know, we were at a point where it's like, okay, a canvas awning that's split into three, you know, would be something that's reasonable and consistent with the neighborhood. And, you know, not very expensive relative to what we're looking at now. And that is not what the owner was not interested in that option, right? They don't want to split it into the patio and whatever reason that's fine, right? But as we keep going down the path, it's doing the opposite of what we were trying to contend, which is to make this not be a feature, make these awnings blended and make them, you know, be part of the landscape, not acting as a function to, you know, attract people and make it a statement piece and all of that. And it's kind of gone in I think in the opposite direction of what we, you know, what our feedback had been and kind of what our expectations typically are. So, I mean, I would ask at this point, you know, where in Columbus can you find a 50-foot lit awning with bulbs every 6 inches anywhere in the city? And I was thinking the Ohio Theater.
The Ohio Theater.
Right, this is not the Ohio Theater, right? So I get it.
Even the entrance.
Right, I mean, the Warwick Hotel was maybe what, 15 feet or something, right? So
Yeah.
they're trying to keep that in mind there, that like, what are we trying to accomplish, right? If the owner wants to have outdoor seating and have some cover for that, you know, there is a option of canopies and things that we can get there, right? We can pursue this and continue down this path and try to answer all these concerns and, you know, we're not saying no, you can there are ways to get us on board with just about anything with enough effort, right? And if this is the path that the owner wants to go down, we'll go there, but it's not going to be an easy path. But yeah, the shop drawing would have to happen, and is it likely to change significantly? Yes. So if you're asking for kind of, again, I'll speak for me, not the rest of the commission, but if you're looking for a path forward on how you get to something, it's going back to the beginning and starting with simple and working from back.
Well, and I think whoever was mentioned shows that this data, try to start to get up to, it's just, I think as we go through this evolution, seeing the history and seeing the other solutions that we presented, so we can see that evolution. So we make sure for your sake that we're not, you know, we're not coming at it the wrong way or thinking about it one way one time and another way the other time. But we are providing consistency on how we are evaluating this. But I'm pretty sure we keep coming back to the concern of preservation of this architectural feature of this building. I would argue, we're not arguing against the activity here with this building. I think this is a wonderful spot. Seeing the people dining there is a great piece of the streetscape. I would actually argue that as soon as you would close that in too much, you lose someone. So there is something about that, you know, as a patron of going out and being exposed. And I realize from a business model, it's a different ball game, and I appreciate what it's trying to achieve here and maximizing that. But there is something about embracing that architectural facade
activating that as much as possible and giving people temporary cover. It doesn't have to be a public solution or something that's going to deter from architectural significance of this building. And just, if I go back and I just take a look and I just want to read through the guidelines and just kind of think about, like, if I look at the short run guideline. That's why I'm trying to figure out if it's an awning canopy, where does it start to bridge the gap of the addition? Just that would be very restricted, but we can answer those questions. I would just look at those guidelines as, and I think the one that starts to get pushed and pulled on is the one that talks about outdoor spaces. And if we can answer that, I think that's from a primary versus a secondary standpoint. I think with every option, we should come back to that statement and try to understand. Because I think that would allow us to understand and be able to answer that question to someone else. Right? The merit, the activation, all of those things in terms of the solution, wow, agree from that perspective. But I think we have to do our due diligence to make sure that whatever decision gets made here, that it's in line with the guidelines, so that way we can evaluate the next field for that similar approach. And that's me, I'm trying to be as consistent as possible. Yes.
Yeah.
Given, given where this one and what could happen.
I would say just give us as much information as possible, you know, if they want to pursue this one based on the work. I understand not wanting to go to the expense of doing their shop drawing, but see if that company's willing to maybe a few sheets out of the shop drawings that created that, so we can understand what it's made out of, what the materials are, how it attaches to the building.
Okay. Kevin, have you got anything to say?
I was absent the last 2 times this application. Said, it's fine.
Cool. Thanks. You know, I think this thing, it pushes the envelope. That's sort of understated. But
We appreciate the continuing to work through this and coming conceptually, because I do understand it's not an easy solution. So a lot of commentary that we do appreciate.
great. Thank you.
Thank you, and.
You know, conceptuals really don't continue,
You-
or do we keep the file?
So, not, conceptual don't continue, but if you would like to be on next month's hearing, you've got until the April 17th deadline, which you typically get an extra week from today. We just have an extra week this month, so everybody gets that additional time. So it's a week and a day. But I know there's been a couple months between reviews for this one, because there's a lot of.
Well, the owner is the guy that, you know,
Well, I was gonna suggest if the owner wants to, we're willing to work with the owner on ideas, and if the owner wants to come before the commission to, so you don't have to be the middleman for it.
Yeah.
Or the one with discussion.
Listen to you, you guys are easy. He has more problems with Italian Village. And, you know, I've got scars.
Because he's had so many code violations.
What?
It's Chris Corso, right?
Yeah.
And he's had a lot of code violations in Italian. And then you don't
He doesn't have friends on your floor. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, don't pack up quite yet, because we have almost everybody here, which means we can finally do election. Pete will not be joining us, I think, until June, just because he's out of town and I did have a chat with Sean about kind of how we're moving forward. I don't know what's finalized in terms of who's getting renewed for what term. Somebody should be reaching out to you hopefully within the next month. I did check on that this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, terms end June 30th.
So before that,
Yes, yes. I did touch base with, Shally Pittman Granger, who's in charge of like the commission retainment and recruitment, about what's happening. And because we need to have the staggered terms, there's a little additional work that's going on in the background. So she's hoping that within the next couple of months of it, within the next month, somebody will be reaching out to everybody. So please don't panic if you haven't heard from, everybody. And from what I can say, I don't think we're not going to ask anybody back. I haven't been like, I want Commissioner Sprite off the commission just to pick on this. So there was, Jane probably had a conversation with you if it had come down to that. But I did talk to Sean because Sean has been our chair for God, quite a few years going. And Sean's also unfortunately our longest serving commissioner. And the department's stance is that we want to kind of, filter new people in. So Sean will be renewed for one more term, length to be determined, not that I will know it, and it'll probably be multiple because what we're asking Sean to do, as well as the rest of you, is for Sean to chair one more year. And then kind of tutor whoever is going to be vice chair to take over the chair position. And there's a bit of a caveat. We need whoever is vice chair, and when they're chair, to be able to make it to the business meetings. It is integral that we have the chair there. And as I discussed with Sean, because he occasionally gets pulled into meetings with me, that I don't mind doing the additional meetings monthly. It just makes it very difficult when somebody is not there. And it's also the HPO's preference as well as his, requirement that the chair is able to make it to those meetings. So with that in mind, I will turn it over to the commission to figure out how we want everything to fall with John to be chair again for a year, or if we want somebody to take over sooner.
Formal way to do this.
You do have to nominate, they do have to, you got to nominate somebody, they have to agree to be able to do it, as well as they have to be present. And then I think somebody seconds them and we vote.
I feel like we must have done this before.
We have,
But I just don't.
mind you, I've done this multiple times and I'm still like, I think this is how we do it. This is probably the one meeting a year that I need our city attorney to be here to be like, this is the process. Although we do have Robert Dawson, who is an attorney, but I don't know if he specializes in that.
If I had a heads up, I could have given you a.
I wasn't even thinking about like, oh, I should figure out how legally we proceed, because I'm like, yeah, we just vote.
Yeah.
But yeah. So if we want to have some discussion first, and we do separate votes for both chair and vice chair, so if we want different discussions, that's okay.
Well, can we start with our current chair and vice chair interested in continuing their roles?
On my end, no consent. So, I think maybe a couple months ago, we knew that terms and such were gonna be adjusted and talk about the renewal of chair versus vice chair. And I felt like I don't mind continuing on, but if you guys recall, the key is I don't want to be in someone's way. I'm more interested in keeping us together versus me sitting in a position. And so, I left it at that, but I feel like the concern that I had before, which is there's times I can't get rid of things. It seems like that there's been coverage without burdening someone else. That was my critical concern. So even as was my critical concern, taking over the first tenure of chair was that too as well. So I feel like whatever is beneficial to keep us together, I'm willing to do that.
And we're comfortable in that role, I think we have a fantastic job of knowing things and keep what needs to be trying to for that. Understanding which makes sense, that being the natural progression, I'm my expectation of it. Elevates to chairs. But, so, okay. If others are interested, I'm not.
Well, so that was gonna be my next question, turning this way. I will say I'm not interested.
So if we're not interested in the position of chair or vice chair, we should be interested in the business of making promotions. So it's not just Commissioner Sprite or Commissioner Skinner. Well, we should,
I guess I could sit back a little bit more often and I got people just look and say, are any of you interested in a, no,
Not revenue, so it's a little, BS, like that.
Robert, good, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I took vice chair when I was about maybe a year or two old, so.
I will also note you guys didn't really have a choice about that because were you vice chair when Kevin Sullivan was chair? Because you were both like Kevin was like right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Kind of, and then I was kind of like, well, we don't have anybody, like Jeffrey was not.
Did he ever chair?
No.
I can only imagine how that was.
So I was vice chair for Mr. Decker.
Mhm.
And then Mr. Decker, his appointment was and so then we came to a point of sliding in the chair. And my concern was sliding in the chair was, and so obviously Tim stepped up and said, hey, don't mind, I can do that. And you've been doing a great job, so I felt comfortable taking and then sliding in the chair position.
Yeah, and I would say, I think if you two could continue to coordinate that, so we can stay on position, just making sure that that coverage is there as fast and so. And John, to echo what Tim said, I mean, you have a way of doing these hearings that generally works very well. It's rather interesting to me that I'm also trying to emulate it in a way. It works very well and keeps the candidate, keeps the applicants pretty even. So, yes, I think you're made for this role. So, let's see it continue. So on that, I would like to nominate you to be the chair, and I'd like to nominate them to be the vice chair. So
One at a time.
separate ones.
Yeah.
One at a time.
Because I'm gonna second.
Oh, you've been second.
All right, and John, you accept.
Yes, again, like I said, I want to make sure that we keep this together. I'm just being serious. We've gotten to a point where I think the synergy is good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying this because I know in the course of what they're gonna do in terms of shuffling the tenure, to make sure that we have overlaps and such. And whatever happens.
Don't expire this.
That's fair. But, there's gonna be moments where we need to maybe try to take on a position that maybe we're not comfortable with. I will let you know, I wasn't comfortable at that time either, so, let's do whatever we can over the course of this next year to allow more team members to get comfortable, so that way the consistency and the amount of people that we have, we can continue to support them. I think which is really important. So, okay?
And I'm here for support, questions, comments.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say, don't feel like that there's no one behind you. Like, I'm not throwing my hat in because I know we got to it. I don't.
No, not at all. I don't feel that, I don't feel that way.
But I think we've got a bench that we could get, certainly within a year. That's all. That's how, if you guys wanted to step down, that would be an option. Yeah, if you want to do that today, yeah.
I feel like what's going to happen is obviously what staff is looking for, but they're giving an opportunity for whatever shuffles off of that person doesn't necessarily compete. That person who shuffles into the right part of the overall commission.
Yeah.
Which I think still keeps us together.
Yeah.
But that's important. Okay.
All right, so do you need a second? I second, you second.
All right, and if we could have a vote?
Aye.
All right.
I just have to do math now. It changed.
I can't vote.
Yeah, and you're technically abstaining.
Five of us voted.
Yes. Yeah, it's how, if you remember on the minutes, like how I do the For, against, abstain. And sometimes my mind just hits the point that it's like, no, not gonna function, even though I've done this so many times. All right, so we've got chair, and then do we need any additional discussion for vice chair?
We need to do a formal nomination.
Yes, although do you want to let somebody else handle it?
Anybody, I, May, Tim Skinner, vice chair.
Second.
All right, and Tim, you're okay with that?
I am.
All right, and if we could have a vote real quick? All right. So that's all the formal business. I do have a couple off-record updates. I let Sean know some of them, but if we want to adjourn the meeting and then we can turn off the recordings.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion to adjourn.
Second.